Okay. Good morning. This week, we're still in the book of Numbers, the Midbar, um, in Hebrew and in the Jewish tradition. It's the book where we're continuing to wander in the wilderness into different wildernesses, which I'll speak about in a minute. And when I think of the people assembled and wandering through the wilderness of life, right? They've come out of this super organized society that in Torah is called Egypt, Mitzrayim, the narrow place, and they've come into this wilderness. They had this experience of trusting that there was some great organizing principle to life, that Torah's mystery being that is actually really driving everything, that we're not really separate from it, even though we think we are. And yet the people are just continuing to wander, and they come into connection with purpose and meaning, and then they fall out of it. And here's Torah again this week, starting with this great promise of giving these instructions for magnificent ritual items and rituals, and creating special times, and then extending it so that everyone can participate, like somehow in the midst of this wandering. And I've been thinking so much about Dante, the Divine Comedy, this great Middle Ages treatise that's really like a Torah. Um, and here's how it starts. And this kind of brings me maybe to where the people are, and helps us understand why they, in a few verses, become just overcome with fear again. In the middle of the journey of life, in the middle of the journey of our life, this is Dante, the opening of the Divine Comedy. In the middle of the journey of our life, I came to myself within a dark wood where the straight way was lost. Ah, how hard a thing it is to tell what a wild and rough and stubborn wood this was, which in my thought renews the fear. And this is what we keep seeing over and over through these two books of the Torah, the last one by Yikra, Leviticus, and this one, Numbers, that there's this great journey. And in the Divine Comedy, Dante is alone, has this sense of complete aloneness. Here, the people are surrounded by all their loved ones, and yet they fall into fear, and the fear leads them to, there's just not enough. There's not enough. Why did you bring us out of Egypt? This is the parsha where the people actually say, it was better in Egypt. It was better when we knew where we were, that knowing where I am, that knowing who I am in the scheme and organization of life somehow gives such comfort that we're willing to put up with enslavement to be there. And then from that fear of not enough, in this Torah portion that describes the people as weeping, they fall into weeping. And the effect on the leaders, luckily their leader is Moses and not some of the leaders we have in our world today, because instead of just saying, okay, that's it, I'm going to completely exploit these people and just put them into my own service, Moses stays the course. And that is just something I think we're all longing for, and in our time, right? Leadership that like stays the course of um, celebrating the wholeness of life. So one of the big kind of picture items that speaks to me about this dynamic of the people getting these instructions: use your creativity, use your knowledge, put in the center of your life these beautiful objects that represent your open heart and your sense of wholeness. In these rituals that aren't enough. Ritual is not enough. we need more. What we need are these ethical guides, and those are here too in this week's Parsha. And the specific ethical guide that gets repeated in this Torah portion and throughout the Torah, right, is the one that says, when a stranger who resides with you would offer a Passover sacrifice, right, there should be one law for you, whether the stranger, the word is ger, or the citizen of the country, that this vision of creating, that the purpose of ritual is to create something that everyone can participate in, that evens the playing field, that is what you put at the center of your society. That is right here too in this Torah portion, and it's repeated over and over throughout the Torah. So the message is that ritual is not enough. We also need clear collective ethics that guide us. And as soon as we fall away from those ethics, we lose our sense of purpose and we fall into fear. Human beings need purpose. We need collective purpose and individual purpose. So what happens right from the beginning? After the Israelites are getting these incredible instructions from, because they're still in the wilderness of Sinai, right? They're still connected to this time, this place where they had this collective awakening to see that, yes, there is a human promise. And if we all come together and listen together and uh, bring each other along, we can fulfill the promise. What happens from that to this place now where Torah says they don't have the capacity yet to do this as a people? Um, they're presented continually with uh, these pulls back to where they came from. They're carrying the trauma from when they were enslaved, and when they were treated as the foreigner. And one thing is, maybe they keep getting pulled back to this psychic memory of when they were enslaved so that they get the message, which is what Torah then puts in. Don't use your past trauma and where you were to let you be pulled back into wanting to be in a system of enslavement and domination. No, get pulled back so that you can remember that you were brought out to do something different. And oh my gosh, do we need this message today? Everyone in the world is so traumatized by our past collective history. Every people can find incredible individual and collective trauma in our past. So what what is it that we want to learn from continually being pulled back to where we were? And Torah never says so that you could do the same thing. No, it's so that you could move forward to this new promise. And what Torah puts right back in this story about how do we access that is go back to your great wise teachers, which in Moses' case is Yitro. He even shows up in a new name, and it's Yitro. The story continues with Moses trying to convince Yitro, his father-in-law, who's the high priest of Midian, a free desert people, another people who have learned how to live in freedom in the wilderness. He tries to convince Yitro to continue leading them through the wilderness. And Torah is saying, when a people is lost, right? When you just don't know your way, look to the wise elders of the other peoples, the peoples who are also indigenous to where you are. And this is such a great failure of our world today, right? That instead of looking to the people who've learned to live on land for a long time, we just continue to put them into worse and worse conditions and think that we alone can find our way. And Torah is saying no. And if you look at the story, after Yitro says, I'm going to stay here with my people, which is a beautiful thing, right? We want peoples to find their own places of freedom. That's when the Israelites get overcome with this ravenous gluttony and doubt. They are nowhere near ready to advance toward the promised land without their connection to the rest of the desert dwellers. And they fall back into this insatiable hunger that comes with separateness, and they're overcome with fear, jealousy, racism toward uh, the Midianites, and I'll give the specifics of that in a minute. And most of us know the story of Miriam, right? They become overcome with xenophobia, right? This is when they start complaining again that they were better off in Egypt. And so Torah is just depicting us humans stuck in this cycle of moving in and out of balance and harmonious relationship with ourselves, with all other peoples, with the divine, and with the land. And it shows Torah is saying that you humans, you're caught in this cycle of acting out the trauma that you experienced at the hands of domination and enslavement. And getting caught in this cycle of trauma prevents you from imagining a world in which no one is dominated or enslaved, neither you nor the other. So they just get caught over and over, as do we in our tragic world today. So in this week's Torah portion, Torah identifies this insatiable craving, and the word craving is a continual theme in the story. This craving for supremacy that's born from believing that you have to take more than you need to be safe, that you have to take more than you need. Uh, this craving and taking becomes the obstacle for moving forward, for moving out of the wilderness of Sinai. And the dislocation from being in balance with other peoples and with what nature provides and with what the divine has brought us is leads to a terrible plague against the Israelites in this week's Parsha. There's an incredible mirroring going on in this week's Parsha between the plague that befell the peoples in Egypt and this plague that befalls the people, the Israelites. So again, Torah is saying we're all human, all of us, and we all have to find our way out of this cycle of domination and supremacy. And what happens with this terrible plague is that everyone who has fallen prey to this psychological trap gets buried. This is right in the Torah portion, and they're buried in a place that Torah identifies and calls the graves of craving. And all of us, any of us who have studied the Buddhist path, know that craving is seen as one of the greatest obstacles to awakening. This craving that you need more, you have to have more, there's never enough. And when you are guided by this form of craving, you end up, as we see, taking from the land, destroying the land, taking from other people, and living in a world that we're living in right now where tens of thousands more of people are hungry and starving on our watch because of our craving for some kind of security that doesn't exist. And this tragedy, the depth of this tragedy, I think, is brought home in Torah by the fact that this befalls Miriam. Miriam has been one of the great heroines. Oh, that's one of she is the only person identified as a prophetess in the Torah, this great prophetess who led the women out of Egypt through song and circle dance. She herself gets stricken with this narrow, discriminatory consciousness of scarcity and supremacy, and it causes a severe disease to befall her. And that's in this week's Parsha. And what happens is Miriam and her brother Aaron, so this is Moses' sister and brother, this is the leadership. They speak against Moses because he has brought Yitro's daughter, a Midianite princess, into his own household, because he has become the father of Midianite children. And the mystery of life, the Yud He Vav He, the great divine in the wilderness, in the Torah, was so incensed by this jealousy, and which comes from this consciousness of scarcity and craving, right? This jealousy and xenophobia that came from the mouths of Miriam and Aaron when they spoke out against Moses' wife, that Torah says Miriam was stricken with snow white scales. When Aaron turned toward Miriam after the great divine heard these words that spoke out, that condemned Moses because he has come into a beautiful, intimate connection with a woman from another tribe, Aaron turns toward Miriam and he sees that she's stricken with scales. And I found a beautiful translation of the words that come from Aaron's mouth when he sees this affliction of his sister because of his words and hers. Let her not be like a stillbirth, which emerges from its mother's womb with half its flesh eaten away. So this is the image of what happens to Miriam when she too succumbs to this way of thinking of jealousy and craving. And Moses cries out, Elna, Rafana La, oh God, ancient God. El is this ancient God. Pray, heal her, please heal her. And so Miriam was saved from being buried, right, in this graves of craving. She was saved because her connection to the people was so strong that if the people stayed with her for 7 days when she was shut out, and if they all went into this deep meditative rest, she would be able to continue on with them. So that's a little light. Torah saying, look, humans, we fall. We fall in our speech. We fall in our actions. We fall in our faith. We fall in our hope. There is always a light. There is a way out. That we pray for each other and that we take time to rest and to actually go in deep into ourselves and look at what is it that's causing us to fall into this fear of never enough, and this belief that we're better off in systems of enslavement. And Torah is saying the whole people, when the leadership falls into this, everyone has to stop with the leadership. The leadership has to stop. We're calling on our leadership to stop and breathe and say, hold on a minute. Torah is telling us we are vulnerable human beings. Our physical condition is so vulnerable. We're protected by this permeable skin that's completely susceptible to all kinds of just fear that brings us to fear because we are so vulnerable, and we have to stop and pay attention and look deeply at how our fear of our vulnerability makes every single one of us susceptible to engaging in hateful speech and action. And so Torah is providing the remedy that when humans are afflicted with this, take time, stop, separate from the camp that is encouraging you to become hateful in your words and speech. Separate from that camp and take time for spiritual reflection, to rejuvenating your grounding in oneness and in compassion for all life form. And we are living in a time when we need this. We need a collective stop. I mean, as I speak, we have in the United States, our federal government has invaded California because tens of thousands of people, Californians, are saying, we don't want to expel our brothers and sisters who have brown skin and speak a different first language, and many of them don't even speak a different first language. They're saying we want to walk in a different way. What is needed? We need these forces that are sending in these private armies and suppressing others. We need them to stop. And we need to collectivize ourselves so that we go out as the brave people of California are doing right now and saying, stop. And we've seen this right in New York City, where I live, where religious Jews weeks ago were marching through the streets of Brooklyn, where I'm from, shouting death to Arabs. And we've just seen this in Jerusalem last week. We need this to stop. And Torah is saying, stop, stop. When you find yourself succumbing to hateful speech, and yes, it's because of the trauma you carried or because of whatever it is in you that just says it's the only way humans can organize ourselves is to be in systems of domination. Torah is saying, stop, realize what has happened to you. The entire community will hold you in deep reflection to transform hateful and demeaning speech and action. Torah is reminding us again over and over that when one group or person or leader openly suggests replacement or other forms of exile and violence against other groups, it's a sign that the whole community is sick, that the whole community has to stop and pay attention and collectively transform the conditions that gave rise to such hateful speech and attitude. So I just want to end by encouraging all of us. I'm going to give a political message. June 14th, come out and say no Pharaoh Day. It's called No King Day, but we could call it No Pharaoh Day. No, we want to go back to Pharaoh Day to support and follow the people in California who are really in the vanguard right now. The tens of thousands of Israelis who are marching on Gaza as we speak, to the people in that ship carrying diapers. That's who we have to say yes to. And I know for myself, I need to stop and say, okay, why and where and how am I holding back from seeing the seriousness of our situation and putting myself forward in a new and more effective way? So thank you, everyone, and hope to see everyone in the streets on June 14th for No King Day, No Pharaoh Day.